a valid judgment.
Okay, hold on to that, because maybe once, all right, and I'm not going to do any more comments right now because I have like 4 pages of text to get through with you guys, but there'll be more time to talk later. But so what I would like to do today in the sources that we're going to study is hopefully bring in some other images to counterbalance or to maybe offer a different way into the Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment. That will bring in some feminine imagery, a little Shekhinah, and some very earthy images. And I found particularly the Zohar text that we're going to look at in a few minutes to be a very different approach to the high holidays, almost like a shamanistic way of looking at what we're doing in the high holidays. And these are a little different, but I hope that maybe they'll give us some alternative images. And all of it's poetry. Like, none of this is like a factual statement about what God is. This is all language and poetry and metaphor, but it will give us some different language and poetry and metaphor that hopefully, if we're holding it with us on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, it might give us some other stuff to work with. And that's my hope. Okay? Yeah. All right, here, let's do it. Okay, so the first, does everybody have the pages? Okay, great. So Psalm 81, verse 4. I'm going to sing this because maybe it'll sound familiar to you. Tiku v'chodesh shofar v'kesa leyom chageinu. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. When do we say that? Erev Rosh Hashanah. It's how we lead into the Amidah on Erev Rosh Hashanah. This quote from Psalms. And what does it say? I gave you a choice in the translation. Tiku v'chodesh shofar, blow the shofar on the new moon, b'kesa layom chagenu. So how would you translate that? Well, that word keseh only shows up in 2 places in the Tanakh. And so if you look in like BDB or other commentators, they're not really sure how to translate it, but it always gets translated, or in most translations, it gets translated as on the full moon for our feast day. And it gets understood as being, even though it's in Psalms, but it gets understood as being connected to Rosh Hashanah because it's talking about blowing the shofar. Blowing the shofar on the new moon. When's the new moon? Yeah, at the beginning of the month. So that's when Rosh Hashanah is a new moon. And then on the full moon for our Chag, which is what's the first full moon after Rosh Hashanah? Sukkot. Okay, so for this whole teaching, we need to be thinking about the moon. And in this whole time of year, we have to be looking up at the moon a lot too, because if you look at the moon, it helps you know how close you're getting to Rosh Hashanah, right? Like when you start seeing like, oh gosh, we're getting really close, because you start seeing the moon getting smaller and smaller. Okay, but then we'll have the new moon, and then the moon will start getting bigger. And I just want to say, we're not in the Zohar yet, but the moon in Jewish mysticism is Shekhinah, okay? So just in this sort of mythic, symbolic world, you'll see later, Zohar is very poetic. We're going to have to like shut off our rational brains in a couple of minutes and just get into sort of like dreamland. But so just know that the moon, and I think the moon in other, right, isn't the moon always sort of like a feminine, image in different cultures anyway. So why did I put or covered, right? So this word can mean, what's that, David? Yeah, in modern Hebrew, to cover, right? So that word that we're not exactly sure what it means in this context, but is often translated as full moon, has something to do about covered moon, which the covered moon is actually the opposite of the full moon, right? Okay, so we're just going to leave it as a question for right now, what that word means. But the midrash that we're going to look at and the Zohar are both going to play with this verse. Okay. All right, so first let's look at this midrash from Vayikra Rabbah. I'm just going to do it in English, but there'll be a few Hebrew words that you're going to want to look at. Actually, you know what? I am going to do it in Hebrew because the Hebrew there's some plays on words in here. Okay, so Rabbi Barachia opened with this verse, our verse that we just read, and said, B'chodesh zeh tichadshu. Do you hear the connection with the words? Tichadshu ma'asechem bashofar. So blow the shofar at the full or covered moon. In this chodesh, tichadshu, right? Renew your deeds with the shofar. Okay, so they're doing a little play on words with in this chodesh, you will chadash, you will make new, right? You're going to renew your deeds with the shofar. And here comes another play on words. B'chodesh hazeh, listen to it, shapru ma'asechem. Do you see the word play there? You can look at the Hebrew. Shofar, right? Shapru means improve your deeds, but it's a play on words with shofar, right? The same letters. Okay, so what does this mean? Tichadshu, renew your deeds, improve your deeds, and it's playing with this verse. The Blessed Holy One said to Israel, if you improve your deeds, I shall become like this shofar for you. Just as the shofar takes in air through one end, right? So picture a shofar, person blowing a shofar, and sends it out through the other, so will I rise from the throne of judgment, the kisei hadin, kachani omed mikisei hadin, v'yoshev al kisei rachamim. V'hofech lachem midat hadin l'midat rachamim. So I will rise from or just say maybe just chair. If you don't like the throne image, let's just say the chair of judgment, and sit on the throne of rachamim, transforming for you midat hadin, the attribute of judgment, which, if you picture sort of, I know we haven't gotten to the Kabbalah part yet, but even without Kabbalah, we have these poles or these sides in Jewish thought, right? We have Din on the left side, judgment, which is like harsh and severe. And then we have, chesed, or in this case, they're talking about rachamim. We'll get into that a little bit more. Loving kindness or compassion. And so God is saying through the shofar, that takes in air at one end, sends out through the other, I'm going to go from judgment, the chair of judgment, to the chair of rachamim. Transforming for you, when does this take place? In the 7th month. Okay. And then this is a quote, by the way, a quote from the Torah, Leviticus 23, about Rosh Hashanah. Does the Torah ever talk about Rosh Hashanah, by the way? Never. The Torah mentions Rosh Hashanah, not by name, in 2 places, I think, where it talks about a day of the shofar sounding. It being in the 7th month, but all the stuff about Yom Hadin and the beginning of the year, that is not in the Torah. Art Green, in his book, Judaism for the World, talks about how he thinks all of that stuff about like the coronation day and was borrowed from a Babylonian festival that took place at that time of year. That's his thesis. But okay, so back to this verse. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe a solemn rest, a memorial proclaimed with the blast of the shofar. Okay, so my question for you, so there's, cute little play on words with renewing our deeds, improving our deeds with chodesh and with shofar. But think for a second, what is the connection between these 2 ends of the shofar that the midrash is describing and God's din and rachamim? Like, what's the connection? Yes, Yossi, would you remember? Oh, thank you, David. God is saying, if you improve your deeds, I shall become like a shofar. Just as the shofar has this one small end and this one big end sends it out, so I am going to do this movement. What's the connection? Go ahead.
I mostly just wanted to point out that there's another wordplay going on here, which is with kisei hadin and kisei harachamim. The kese is you got a hey olive switch going on there, but it's the same type of wordplay that he's connecting the kese leyom chagenu to kisei hadin, kisei harachamim.
Very nice. Shkoyach. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Anybody want to understand what is the connection between the two ends of the shofar and the two chairs of God?
Well, it makes sense to me that the smaller end of the shofar would be connected to din because it's constrained and it's, small and it's restricted. I'm trying to come up with a connection between the big end and the rachamim, but it's expansive.
Yes,
and it's
beautiful. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That I would have said it exactly the same way. The narrow end, I mean, picture like blowing the shofar, like, right? And it's like in this little small end and then the big, this big sound coming out of the big open end. So it's very visual how the air is moving from this narrow constricted place to a big expansive place. Yeah, Hannah. Oh. Do you mind using the microphone so people can hear you? Thanks.
I think there's a suggestion that we have the capacity to liberate God, through our change. Then God will be able to leave God's narrowness, Mitzrayim of judgment, and be maybe God's truer, more benevolent self.
And are you saying by our blowing the shofar?
No, by our change of our deeds, by our renewal and our, because I think the verse says that if you do that, then then God will act as a shofar.
Nice, beautiful. Yeah, Ruth.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit to that sort of image, and that the part that we hear and are left with and leave with is the Rachamim piece. And even if it started with the Din piece, which it did, that what we're left with is much more what it's transformed into. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Because that's what we hear. Those of us congregated who are listening to the shofar, that you hear the sound of the shofar, that the piece that we hear, is the end result of all that, which is much more rachamim than din. So that's kind of adding to that a little bit.
Yeah, and I hope, we can take that into our kavanah when we hear the shofar. I feel like the shofar is really the essence of Rosh Hashanah. This year, the first day of Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbat, so you have to come second day. This whole teaching is like a little bit thrown off by the fact that the first day of Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbat. But I feel like, don't tell anybody I said this, but like we could skip all those PUTim about Yom Hadin and just like listen to the shofar, like really that's that. Don't tell anybody I said that, okay? The really short service, the abbreviated service. We just hear the shofar, but really, that if we take it that it's about rachamim, and I think sometimes we get so excited about the talent of the shofar blower and yasher koach and did they do a good one? Did they not do a good one? Did it sound like this or that? And it's no, it's really supposed to move us to this place of rachamim and move God to rachamim too. Okay, Ross, and then we're going to move on.
So what I'm wondering if all of this about the shofar is related to the full and covered moon, that the covered moon is the mouth and the full moon is the other end of the shofar.
Whoa, say that again?
So I'm looking back at the Psalm.
Okay.
And we're talking about the two ends of the shofar, one covered with your mouth, the other open and full voice.
Nice. Yeah. So yes, I love the way you're thinking, and I want to invite us to keep thinking in the realm of images and the moon, because just like we have I think what I hear you saying is we've got the full moon and we've got the covered moon, And so too, we have like these, like this end of the shofar and that end of the shofar. And yes, beautiful. Interesting. Okay, so we're going to do a little Zohar now. And we had to look at that midrash because it'll help us with the Zohar. So the Zohar, just a short little introduction about Zohar. And this is from Danny Matt's translation. The Zohar was written, according to scholars, in between 1270 and 1330 in Castile in Spain by Moshe de Leon in a very peculiar kind of Aramaic. I didn't bring the Hebrew for you because the Hebrew would have been a translation from the Aramaic anyway, so I just brought you the English. But it's written as if it was written more than 1,000 years earlier, supposedly a found ancient manuscript by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay, so it's pretends like it's much older than it is. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his chavraya, his friends, are walking around and they're musing about things. They're encountering different interesting people like donkey drivers and old men, and they're having these encounters, and they're speaking Torah, but it's very different than the kind of midrashim or Torah commentaries that we are used to. It's very poetic and very symbolic. And like I said before, just kind of let your rational, critical thinking brain just rest this Shabbat afternoon right now and just kind of go into like, you just woke up from a dream and you're trying to sort of like think about the images that came out in your dream, I think is a helpful way to look at Zohar. Okay, so this little bit of Zohar, like I said, I want to thank my teacher Malila for sharing this with me. Is going to talk about Sfirot. It's going to talk about the same imagery of the high holidays that we've been talking about, like in this previous midrash, but it's going to bring it into the map of the Sfirot. So hopefully you can kind of picture that in your mind. I'm sorry, I didn't bring a graphic of it in here. And think about things like masculine and feminine, Din and Rachamim, compassion and anger, light and dark, the moon, like just kind of be in that realm as you take it in, okay? All right, so I'll read it. So Rabbi Shimon and his son, Rabbi Elazar, were traveling on the road with Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yossi. As they were going, they came upon an old man who was holding a little boy. Now, there was a whole really interesting part here that I skipped because it would have taken us a couple hours to do it. But basically, this man is a hermit who's been living in the desert. And he's coming back to civilization for Rosh Hashanah. And they have this conversation like, impart your wisdom, impart your Torah to help, why are you coming back from the desert for Rosh Hashanah? And this is what he teaches, this old man hermit who lives in the desert the rest of the year. Okay, so this guy opens and says, our verse that we now know very well, blast the shofar on the new moon, and I just put it here on the covering for our festival day, because we're going to go with that translation for now, that it's the moon is covered here. Now is the time for supernal harsh judgment, or Din, right? That's that left side of Din, to be aroused. Okay, so Rosh Hashanah, this is the time for Din to be aroused. So even though, like, just interjecting here, like, I don't like all those, all the piyutim about Yom HaDin and blah, but there is something on a cosmic level at this time of year is the time that Din, as an energy, I'll say, sound very California when I say that. It's like the energy of Din is aroused at this time, okay? And when it is aroused, the other side, or the sitra achra, which is how Kabbalah calls the other side, meaning sort of the dark side, the source of evil in the world, which Kabbalah understands to be an imbalance on the side of deen, right? We have deen, we have chesed, the left and the right. But if there's too much deen in the world, like that's how, just a little tangent here, in mysticism, if everything is God, but if everything is God, well, where does evil come from? Is evil God too? So evil is an imbalance on the side of deen. If it's not balanced with chesed, and then we have this, balance in Tiferet in the center, but if we have an imbalance in deen, that's where evil comes from. And you can think about it, right? Like, it makes sense. Like, I relate it to, when Ezra was a toddler, I took this parenting class from Alana Rennan, and she talked about like kindness and firmness as like the two, we have like firmness is like deen and kindness is like chesed. And if you have like too much on the side of firmness without any of the kindness, like that's not good parenting, right? That's just like your mean, not loving parent. But if it's too much on the side of kindness without any firmness to balance it out, then like that's problematic too. So we want to have this balance. But okay, so the other side is empowered along with deen. Once empowered, it rises and covers the moon. So why do we have a covered moon on Rosh Hashanah? Because the Sitra Achra, through the forces of deen, are covering the moon, which is Shekhinah, which shines no light and is filled from the side of judgment. So what are we saying here, Lydia? This is for you with balancing out all the masculine images that we have again in our machzor. The Zohar is saying that Rosh Hashanah, the Shekhinah, the light of the Shekhinah, is being covered over by the forces of deen, which are present in the world at Rosh Hashanah. Then the world is under judgment, those above and those below. And a herald proclaims through all the firmaments, prepare the throne of judgment for the master of all, for he is about to judge. Let's just look at number 9 as a footnote from Danny Matt's translation. It's on the next page. Blast the shofar in the new moon. The new moon of Tishrei marks Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment, when the sphira of deen, the sphira is like that Kabbalistic energy, is aroused. This arousal empowers the demonic force, which accuses Israel of its sins and obscures the light of Shekhinah, symbolized by the moon. Okay, so on kind of like an energetic and like on a cosmic and on an earthly level, this is what the Zohar is saying is happening on Rosh Hashanah. That deen is covering the moon and the Shekhinah. Okay, let's pause here for a second. I just want to hear any thoughts or reflections on the imagery so far. Yeah, I don't know if I can answer it, but go for it, Pesach.
I'm just hearing like the sphira that I think of that here is referring to deen, I think of as gevura. And so I'm just wondering if those are absolutely synonymous or if there's a difference between
As
them.
far as I know, they are synonymous.
I have a question.
Okay.
So deen and Shekhinah they're both aspects of God, right? So one aspect of God is occluding, shadowing the other. Is that the?
Yeah, that's
Because we're not the demonic force. We're not talking about anything outside. We're talking about one aspect of the divine clouding the other. Is that the image?
Yes. I mean, it's a complicated question about the Sitra Achra because in some ways it seems like it's a force that's separate from God. But all I can really say is that it's like Dean so far imbalanced that there's nothing outside of God in this thinking, but it's like so far that it's the other side. I mean, just think about like Star Wars. I don't know. Never mind. That's not, it's too complicated. Okay, yeah.
I think it's important to recognize that the imbalance is a result of humanity's failure. That we are the ones who are responsible to take responsibility for the failure of this imbalance. And all the
Okay.
evil comes from originally comes from us.
Well, the Zohar didn't say that yet. I mean, it's going to be getting in a few minutes into what our role in this is. But all that it said thus far is that, wait, where is it? Now is the time for Dean. It could just be that there's, yeah. So I don't know. I just don't want to assume because it didn't say that. Yeah, Barry.
So if I may, at this point, when studying Zohar with Rabbi Arthur Green, at around a
Yes.
time like this, he'd say, are we talking about the cosmos out there, or are we talking about our internal world and how we judge ourselves and others versus having compassion for ourselves and others?
Yes. All of this is, inside and outside. I think this teaching, and I invite you to take it in on both the, cosmic realm and the psycho-spiritual internal realm as well. That's the amazing thing about these symbols in Zohar is they operate on multiple levels simultaneously. Yeah.
I just had a question. My Hebrew is not wonderful, but I think somebody over here was implying that Gevurah is associated with din, with judgment.
Yes.
But don't you also have to have Gevurah to use compassion? And
So the way Gevurah gets used as that left side, opposite or with chesed, for example. I mean,
it needs strength also.
yes. I mean, just like I was saying about kindness and firmness, they go together. They go together. An imbalance on either side is problematic, and ideally you want to have those two in balance. Okay. So carrying on, let me just keep my eye on the time. Okay, here's the mystery illuminated for us in the desert. Remember, he was the desert guy. Why is supernal judgment aroused on this day? Okay, so this is getting to maybe what you were saying, Sheila, like, is this because of something we did? Why is it that this is the time of Dean? Well, all mysteries and all precious holiness depend entirely on the seventh. And from that supernal seventh, supernal world, called the world that is coming. Now, this is where it's getting a little over my head here, but this is Bina, the supernal, the higher feminine in the spherotic chart. And how do you get to 7? Well, according to Danny Matt's footnotes, that you have to count up. You have to count up 7 from Shekhinah, I guess, or Malchut. And if you count up, you get to 7. So I don't know. This is like, I'm a little lost on this part, but he's saying that, so something about the 7th, right? It's the 7th month, and the Bina is the 7th sphera, counting up from the bottom, shine all lamps, all holiness, and all blessing. So Bina, all the blessing and all the light is flowing down from Bina up above. When the time comes for blessings to be renewed and holiness to shine, right? It's the new year. And this is the time to renew the blessings and start off with holiness in the new year. It seeks to examine the mending of all worlds. And all those mendings, maintaining all, ascend from those below if they are fitting. Sheila, maybe you read ahead. If not, it remains unshining until the wicked are separated from the righteous. So, like Sheila was saying, the Zohar is saying here, okay, Bina wants to flow down all this light, but there needs to be discernment. Do we merit it? Let's discern the righteous, separate the righteous and the wicked, and see, like, do we merit the flow of blessing from up above? And so judgment is aroused. You need Deen to discern between the righteous and the wicked, or let's say wickedness and righteousness. I don't want to say some people are wicked, some people are righteous. We all have, some of both. Are they fitting? If not, it remains unshining. Okay, then Deen is aroused. And from that Deen, the Sitra Achra, the other side, is empowered, becoming the accuser, mekatreg, or like the prosecutor, so that those wicked ones be given to him and he covers the moon. So it seems like something about this flow from Bina, this upper mother, requires an examination of the world and of the people. And so judgment, Deen, is happening. But if it's imbalanced, then it leads to the Sitra Achra, and it causes a covering of the moon, as we saw earlier. That's what I'm understanding so far. Does that sound right? Or any other thoughts? Yes, David?
Hold on. No.
Sorry about that. Doesn't Bina mean wisdom? And I'm wondering, because you haven't said that, and I'm just wondering what part does wisdom play here in moving from judgment to mercy or whatever, or judging the righteous versus the wicked?
I feel like we might need Danny Matt here for that, or Malila. I mean, you're right that, yes, Bina is one of the upper, Keter Chochman Bina or Chochma Bina Dot, one of those three ways of saying what those top three sphirot are. I mean, as they kind of map onto the body, yes, they're like the mind, the brain. I don't know how to answer that, how wisdom. But let's see, does he say anything in the footnote about Bina? Yeah. I just love to get a description of the map sometime. Yeah. I don't know. When we see Danny Matt, he's going to be bringing his granddaughters to Ami team. So he'll be around more often and we can ask him about that. Yeah. That's okay. All right. So I want to make sure we get through this because okay, I'm going to keep going. So that other side, that Sitra Achra, exists as a hard shell, a klipa, like I was talking about earlier today. This shell that cannot be broken except by the advice given by the Blessed Holy One to Israel. And what is that advice? Blast the shofar on the new moon, on the covering for our festival day. Okay, so the other side is a klipa that covers, it didn't say what yet, he'll say in a second. And in order to break that covering by which the moon is covered, so the moon, Shekhinah, is covered by a klipa, which is the Sitra Achra, and cannot shine, and can't shine the light that is coming from Bina above, or maybe you want to say wisdom too. Okay. And remember, again, both Shekhinah and Bina are the feminine sphirot too. So when Israel below aroused the shofar, the sound issuing from it strikes the air, splitting firmaments until it rises to that mighty rock covering the moon. So what does the sound of the shofar do? It breaks that klipa that is covering the light of the Shekhinah, the moon. He perceives and discovers an arousal of compassion, rachamim, ascending, poised above. He, the sitra achra, the covering, the klipa on the moon, is confounded. Then that sound persists and removes judgment, din. Once compassion has been aroused below, so too another supernal shofar is aroused, emitting a sound that is compassion. And sound meets sound, compassion meets compassion. By arousal below, there is similarly arousal above. And that's a very common expression throughout mysticism, Kabbalah, that there's an arousal from below and it creates sort of a mirror arousal from above. So we blow the shofar, it creates a supernal shofar, the sound of compassion meets the sound of compassion. And through all of that, the covering of the moon is broken and the moon, the Shekhinah, is allowed to shine her light. I'm going to keep going for a minute, but you can look at footnote 11. Let me just see if there's anything. I think we got all that. Okay. Now you might say, how can a sound below or an arousal below arouse similarly? Come and see. The lower world is always poised to receive and is called precious stone, which is another name for Shekhinah, Danny Matt says in his footnote. We're so lucky to have Danny Matt in Berkeley. I mean, like the guy who translated the Zohar is like right here, and it's amazing because we can ask him any. If you have any questions, ask him, not me. Okay. Okay. So the lower world is poised to receive and is called precious stone, and the upper world gives to her only according to her state of being. If she displays a radiant face from below, so she is illumined from above. But if she displays sadness, judgment confronts her. Similarly, it is written, Ivdu et Adonai besimcha, serve God in joy. A person's joy draws another supernal joy. And I just want to say here, because we had some feedback on the High Holiday survey last year that some people said it was too joyful. What's with all the dancing and the clapping? I thought the holidays were supposed to be like somber. And so I just want to say that the Zohar is saying, in order to give the Shekhinah this radiant face, there has to be joy, serving God in joy, that the joy creates a supernal joy that allows, this flow for the Shekhinah to shine. So if anybody complains about, joy and clapping and dancing, just refer them to this.
Joy doesn't need to be all external.
Okay, I'm just defending clapping, that's all, and dancing. Yeah. All right, so let me keep going because I don't want to run out of time. Okay, so thus, just as this lower world is aroused, so she draws from above. Therefore, Israel hastens to arouse a sound through the shofar, mystery of compassion, comprised of fire, water, and air becoming one. Now let's look at Danny's footnote for that one, because I was like, what? Okay, the footnote 13. Just as this lower world is aroused, as Shekhinah is aroused by Israel below, so she draws the spherotic flow from above. The sound or voice of the shofar corresponds to the divine voice of Tiferet. So Tiferet's in the center there between Din or Gvura on the left side, Chesed on the right side, Tiferet, or compassion in the center, which includes, I'm reading Danny Matt, all three qualities of Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet, symbolized by water, fire, and air. So, okay, as the sound of the earthly shofar ascends, it strikes the precious stone of Shekhinah. Okay, so back to the text. I'm leaving the footnote now. And that's that balance. We have this balance between these three, which is ideally where we want to get to. Ascending, it strikes this precious stone, which is imbued with the colors of that sound. I mean, this is really, it's like a psychedelic trip through the imagery of, maybe that would be an interesting way to do the high holidays. It might all make more sense. All right, we'll get Josh Gressel here for that one. Okay, yeah. We have, you know, we can have like the traditional service in the sanctuary, minyan dafna in the social hall, and the psychedelic minyan, I don't know, somewhere else. Okay, so we might have to take that onto the board, yeah. Maradatra, okay. Ascending, okay, so yes, so the stone, which is Shekhinah, is imbued with the colors of the sound, and fire and water and air. Is that what they were? Fire, water, and air are balanced. Okay. Then, according to her appearance, her meaning Shekhinah, so she's drawing from above, from the flow of Bina. The sound of yes. Okay. And that, of course, is defeating that accuser, that mekatreg, that sitra achra that has been aroused because of this time of judgment. Okay, so once she is arrayed by this sound, compassion issues from above and settles upon her, and she is encompassed from below and above. Then the other side, the sitra achra, is confounded. He looks and sees the radiant face, and his power weakens, and he cannot accuse. And this precious stone displays radiance in every direction. Remember, the precious stone is Shekhinah. Radiance below and radiance above. Okay. What does all this mean? So I hope you were able to just kind of like take it in and let it kind of mush around in your sleepy Shabbat afternoon consciousness. And just love to hear, you know, there's no right answer because I don't really fully understand it myself. And I read it like 10 times at least this week. But any thoughts on what all this means and what it might mean for how we might approach Rosh Hashanah? And I should mention, this text continues. I couldn't keep going on, but it does get into Yom Kippur and Sukkot. And obviously we're heading towards the full moon, right? And we're heading towards the being, you know, removing the sins, and then getting to what is Sukkot, Zman Simchatenu, the time of the radiance of the Shekhinah and the joy. So that's like, right now we're really on the Rosh Hashanah part and the shofar part, but that's ultimately what we're heading towards. So just any thoughts, reflections about all this imagery and what it might mean? Yeah, Marilee.
So in the second paragraph, the other side exists as a hard shell.
Yeah.
That part where it talks about the sound issues from it strikes the air, splitting the firmaments. And this reminds me of something I've heard for many years, is the sound of the shofar breaking open the heart.
Yes.
It's totally what came, the imagery for me.
I'm so glad you brought it into the heart, because 100%, yes, that it's talking about in this sort of cosmic symbolic realm, but yes, this is what it needs to be doing inside of our heart. 100%. Thank you. Yeah. Ruth, and then, oh, okay, sure.
I'm going to apologize for being somewhat of a concrete thinker, which is not really where you are with this at all. But it's just reminding me of some images like in Torah with Jacob's ladder, with our angels running up and down both directions. Mm-hmm. And I think, so for me, that was very powerful, the back and forth energy, that it's not just one directional. And when we go up, we get something different and we bring it back down, and then that metamorphizes, and then we take that back up. So it's this continual cycle.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I just wanted to say is, when I was a child, one of the things that really intrigued me about the Battle of Jericho, including the song, was that I think there's some, I don't know if there's actually scientific proof of this, but the vibration of the shofar being blown was what brought down the walls of Jericho. So it's something about the vibration and the effect of the vibration. And I don't know, so that kind of tied together for me.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, like I used the word shamanic before at the beginning of this. Like, I feel like there is something, you know, if we can get out of our kind of modern or whatever we are, postmodern, like thinking brain and just like feel, the vibration and hear the sound and let our heart feel it, and to let the klipa, right? Because really, isn't that what we're doing? Like, we're softening our heart, we're opening our heart with the sound of the shofar. Like, it's supposed to do something to us. We're not just like reading a bunch of words and like taking it in on an intellectual level. Like, it's supposed to transform us. Yeah. And that flow, like you talked about, the angels going up and down, like shefa, like that flow of energy that comes down, goes back up. It's a two-directional process between us and the divine. Okay, Ruth, and then Hannah.
Yeah, just two slightly different things. One in response to your question or your prompt, kind of thinking about, we talk about, don't let it be all Dean. We're talking about in the end result, it's compassion, but you sort of you can't get to that without the Dean part. The recognizing what is it that needs some judgment looked at, and only then can it kind of come out as the compassion toward that. But then the other piece that I wanted to ask, really a question, which I know you said we're supposed to view this all in sort of imagery, poetry, but on a more literal sense, we have a new moon every month, and it's covered every month. Is there something different about this month that has the special focus of the din and rachamim or chesed? Like, why is that not happening every month?
Right, that's a great question. I mean, maybe that's why the Zohar had to say the thing about the 7, right? Because it's the 7th month and Bina, and like this is the time of judgment, and why? Because you could say, well, why not every single month? So yeah, maybe that's the answer, that there's. Right. Yeah, it's a good question.
There are rituals for sort of a Yom Kippur Katan every month. But I think one of the things that's so moving to me is that it's a time of cleanup, not just in our own selves, but like in the flow between our world and the upper world. And that during the year, we've schmutzed it up.
I used that word earlier today too.
And
yes.
we're using all our technologies, including the things that are, anti-intellectual, but like the visceral things like shofar, to break it back open so that the shefa can flow, from the narrow to the wide. And it's, as you said, same inside us as it is above. So if we can be affected by the shofar in our personal lives, we can also use our own teshuvah to stimulate that kind of breaking open on high, so that so that God can function. Yeah, because we've sullied the field.
Yeah, and we have to acknowledge the klipa. Like you said something, Ruth, about to get to the rachamim, to get to the softening the heart. Like, we have to do the discerning. We have to do the din. We don't just go straight to the rachamim. We go from din to rachamim. Like, we want God to go from the seat of din. And it feels like if we just try to skip over like the hard stuff, or the things that are closing our hearts, the anger, the shame, the pain, the whatever it is, like, we want to examine that and break it open. We don't want to just pretend like it's not there. And actually, I brought a little visual aid that I saw on my desk. A few years ago, I did a Jewish studio project thing. I don't even remember what it was, but this page that says, it's a little book, and it says, enter through the door of Dean. And I made it red, and it's got a little door. It's like, there has to be a door. There has to be a something, the klipa, and then you open the door, and it says, to the waves of rachamim. And it's like blue flowing water, and and I didn't even know the thing, and it said in here maybe about the air, what was it? The air, the fire, and maybe I did, air, fire, and water. but it's like we have to go through it. We can't just go right here. Wouldn't this be nice if we could just be here all the time? But no, like go through this, do the work, do the Yom Hadin stuff, and then uncover the moon. Like the moon starts covered, you know? Right. If you didn't hear it, Mary said, if you skip the judgment part, you're just being the permissive parent that's all on the side of kindness without any of the firmness. Do the balance, do the this, and go to there. Yeah. Camille.
Hi.
Hi.
I just am noticing about how the moon becomes by the end of this story a precious stone, and I kind of like that change. And then I like the process that it describes of the change when it has all this kind of sciency and sort of alchemy, like water, air, and fire, and then the colors of the sound, so sciency and alchemy, kind of forcing, like, you could imagine some sort of process of something becoming a diamond or something like that. And so all that forcing, but I also think about how we started off with, these sort of, there's a lot of formulaicness of what we do on the days and leading up to the days. And then the, sort of like the harshness of, the imagery of like the book closing. And then you have this like force, like this different moon, the moon makes sense with the shofar, but then the precious stone kind of surprised me. And it's a less formulaic and more of like a pressurized change. And it's kind of, you said to, go along with these images. So.
I love that you use the word alchemy. Like, I feel like that helps us understand like what's going on here. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. How are we doing on time? David, and then I want to do another thing. Yeah.
Something I always think about is, what is it? Cheshbon nefesh, and soul searching, and I think this is part of it. And I always think of it in terms of rebirth. And I was reading toward the end of your handout, and it said that the shofar, that some Kabbalah, Kabbalists feel that the shofar is shaped like a birth canal.
Oh yeah, we didn't read that yet, but maybe we will. We'll get to it in a second.
Did.
Yeah.
And I was really very impressed with that, because I think that there's a dynamic, the flow, the rebirth from the womb, that when you are doing soul searching, you are kind of reborn, and that the judgment that you see or you find from God is not that harsh. It kind of leads you to mercy, or that's maybe your sentence is another year, that we're going to give you another break, another chance. And to me, it seems very beautiful. And the strength of the Shekhinah also impresses me.
Thank you. Yeah, let's read that one. But just to kind of sum up the Zohar here before we go on to a different thing, and we'll end in like 5 or 10 minutes if you're starting to get tired. So just taking all this imagery around the shofar and Din and Rachamim, and just to think, about our own hearts and our own coverings, like what's covering the Shekhinah. And what, if we're sounding the shofar or hearing the shofar, and we want to like break apart that klippah, what is the klippah for you at this time? Like, what does that mean to you in this particular year of your life? What is the compassion, the voice of compassion that you're sending up, and then the voice of compassion that's coming down and breaking apart this other side, this klippah that's covering the moon, that's covering the heart, that's covering the radiant, joyful face of the Shekhinah? I'll just let you sit with that for a minute before we move on to the next text. And if you don't have the answer right now, it's okay. You have another few weeks to think about it. All right, so let's do two more things real quick. One is from Likutei Halachot, which is Rabbi Nachman of Bratzlav's student, Reb Nussin, who wrote many of his teachings down. And so what does he say, as David was referencing? The shofar is narrow at the bottom and wide at the top. And you have to blow specifically from that narrow place. If you blow from the wide part, nothing will come out. Maybe this is like what we were saying before about, like, you have to go from Din to Rachamim. You can't just go straight to the Rachamim. We need to blow in order to release its sound. That is the voice of truth, specifically from a narrow place. Mimakom hatzar daika, specifically from that narrow place. And then God will make that narrow place more spacious, like the top of the shofar. As it is written, Min hametzar karati ya, anani v'merchav ya. As it is written, from the narrow place I have called to you, Yah, and have been answered in spaciousness. Sit with that for a minute. So in this month of Elul, we are looking at, like, what are narrow places? What are all the narrow places from which we want to sound the shofar and be answered from that spacious, expansive Rachamim place? Yeah, please. Wait for the microphone.
Just going to add one real teeny thing, especially having brought in the piece that David brought in about the birth canal and having experienced birth. I'll say that if it just ends at that, well, first of all, that wider place only gets wider as something's moving through it. And then where it actually ends up is beyond that. That's not really the end point. The end point is full spaciousness, not just the slightly wider place than it used to be. Like if we cover the top, it's still wider, but the sound still doesn't come out. It needs to get out of there.
Wait, say the last thing again.
That, well, both with birth and with the shofar, if you cover that wider part of that particular piece, you're not done. You have to let it out into the great spaciousness. So, yeah.
And something new is born. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So this last passage is from Estelle Frankel, another Berkeley person. We're so fortunate to have all the brilliant, wise teachers here, from her book Sacred Therapy, which parents referenced, that we need to reread Alan Liu's book every year. I am rereading Estelle Frankel's book this year and finding it very fruitful for high holiday prep. So that book is over 20 years old, but I'm loving revisiting it, and it's offered a lot. So I recommend it if you haven't read it or want to reread it. So here's what she says, and I think it's just a nice synopsis of everything that we were studying today. Every year during the High Holy Days, Jews engage in communal healing rites of forgiveness and atonement that are aimed at moving the cosmic energies from judgment to compassion. According to Kabbalah, the shofar, which is actually shaped like a birth canal, narrow at one end and broad at the other, symbolizes the movement we attempt to effect within ourselves and the cosmos at large, from the constricted space of deen or judgment to the expansive state of rachamim, compassion and forgiveness. The shofar's power to effect a shift from deen to rachamim in the divine and human realms rests on its ability to break open even the most well-barricaded of hearts. Marilee, that's what you were saying before. Thank you. During the High Holy Days, we attempt to storm the gates of heaven by breaking down the walls that keep us separate from our innermost being, our very own heart. Moved by the shofar's evocative cry, we open up to that place inside us that is gentle, compassionate, and forgiving. And as we make that shift within ourselves from deen to rachamim, say the rabbis, we enable God to move from the throne of judgment to a throne of mercy. The High Holy Days provide an important model for all Jewish healing, which ultimately is about moving life toward the expansive energy of love. Yeah, how?
Thank you. So much of this imagery reminds me of Pesach, especially Pesach cleaning, which symbolizes cleaning ourself, our soul, and cleaning away the dirt of that's on our soul. So I think that's probably a general image that repeats in Judaism from holiday to holiday. But
Yeah.
these two holidays in particular seem to have that in common.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for adding that. Really, yeah, you can look at so many of our holidays and our practices and our rituals as being about this movement from, din to rachmim, constriction to expansiveness, from, klipot to breaking the klipot. I mean, yeah, 100%. Thank you. Yeah, Lydia.
I got a real revelation here, so thank
You
you.
got a
for that.
revelation?
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Well, I don't know. I
Love
think
it.
One of the places I
My
always
work is done here.
I think I'll just leave now. One of the things that, sorry. Okay. And one of the places I always get stuck in the liturgy at high holidays is that recitation of, who will die from fire, who will die from this, who will die from that. And I am really struck with terror every year reading that. And I really kind of have come to understand through this teaching that fear is what is the covering on my heart. And that I need to find a way to break through that, because I really get stuck with that, and I get very resentful with the liturgy and the focus on doom and gloom and all the bad things that can happen. And it kind of blocks me from being able to fully realize moving forward with tshuva and to come to that joy. So that's just, for me, that is one of the things that's covering my heart, is I feel that fear. And trying to break through that fear is going to be something I'm going to really, try to work toward reading the liturgy this year.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Okay. Well, one.
Barry will be.
Yeah. Okay. Go
and then-
ahead.
and then
Sure.
we'll-
Yeah. and then
So
we'll-
you started out by asking us this afternoon how we felt about that metaphor of the king in the castle and all that stuff. So one thing that this brings me to from what we've processed here is Rabbi Art Green again says that when the Baal Shem Tov was wandering in the Carpathian Mountains, he ran into Catholic mystics who part of their observance was Mother Mary, the eternal feminine. And that it's around that time with the Hasidim that the concept of the Shekhinah really took bloom. And I think in a way, part of what I'm seeing is a movement in Judaism as away from that patriarchal origins to a more feminist. This is the first time I'm reading she and her capitalized. So I personally see that like we're in the midst of a process, and maybe it's going to take another 1,000 years until we've really incorporated the eternal feminine and the compassion into our liturgy and our lives and our hearts. But that's on a broader level. One of the things that I'm seeing is I kind of struggle here with the king in the castle stuff, which no longer works for me. But we're moving towards something else that's open and more broad and more compassionate.
Beautiful. Well, I hope that these texts and these images will, carry you through the next couple of weeks, and maybe, as you look at the moon and as you hear the shofar and as you see some of the liturgy, the metaphors that might be harder for us to relate to, and we can remember, the radiance of the Shekhinah, or the the precious stone and the colors and the everything, that whatever resonated for you today. And I hope that it will give you some material to work with for your own, uncovering your hearts and moving from din to rachamim. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again to my teacher, Malila, for sharing this Zohar text with me.
Did a great job. You did a great job.
Don't ever be afraid to step off into the unknown again. It's just so beautiful and so fruitful.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
I wanted to give you a sweet story for the joy and to counter the complete. Zoharic always said that it's like when you face it, right? Like somebody said that. Yeah. And there are a bunch of teachings about that. I said, like when you're cleaning for Pesach, you whistle while you work. And that's how it should be.
Beautiful. Yeah. Actually, yeah, I remember.
It's a happy time.
Yeah, there's like a little Baal Shem Tov story about like why does the serving like sing Baal Shem Tov or something, because I forget how that story ends. It's like what you were doing. We're cleaning the Melech's whatever. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. One image why is the difference is this is the new moon of Rosh Hashanah, as opposed to the moon which holidays in the middle of the month.
Right. Isn't that unusual? Because most of the holidays are on the full moon, right?
So the explanation that I read was it was very personal to between you and God. It's not to be.
Oh, like the light. There shouldn't be so much light that everybody can see it. It's like a little, like you want a little privacy. Nice. Oh, I like that. I hadn't heard that before. That's very cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Got your call.
Thank you for managing the microphone.
Study this a little more.
I had to read it like at least 10 times and I still didn't understand it.
Right?